Yeah. Okay. So
Okay, yeah.
we are here with Shane Embury from Napalm Death, Brujeria, Dark Sky Burial, and many more other musical projects to talk about his new book called Life and Napalm Death, and of course, other subjects related to that. To start it, I'd like to ask you, you seem to be a real music fan, someone that really likes the kind of art, be it listening, creating, showing your love for bands through t-shirts or talking about it. And your answer to me, to my email asking for this interview, you kind of confirmed that. As you said, you will have some time to do what to do best, what it is, make music and talk about it. So I'd like to ask you about your oldest remembrance about music, and why this kind of art became such important in your life.
I think, well, it was with the book. It's a strange thing with the book because I never imagined having a book, and then you get so part of that was to talk about where it all kind of started, I guess. And I'm 55, and I grew up in the 70s, and my dad he just liked, because he was a kind of ex-army guy. He liked brass band music. That's what he listened to, which I kind of appreciate years later in a way, because just for orchestration purposes, I suppose. But my mum liked, she was a Beatles fan, Rolling Stones. She loved, all that kind of stuff. So the radio was always on constantly. And then we had a thing called Top of the Pops, which is a weekly chart show. I'm not. You know what? I don't even watch normal TV anymore. I don't know if it even exists now, but back then it did. So when I got to the age of, I suppose, 5 or 6, at that point the theme tune was the guitar riff from "Whole Lot of Love" by Led Zeppelin.
Oh,
So they
nice
used
memory.
that. So I was like, "What's this?" And I'm like, I like that. That sounds pretty good. And so I guess I kind of warmed to the guitar, the sound of the guitar. And then in Birmingham, or close by to where I came from, there was a band called Slade. And
Yeah.
so I they dressed crazy, had strange guitars, and I was like, this is amazing. I like all this. So that was kind of what got me into, I guess, rock. Pop rock. I mean, those bands, Slade, all those bands were. Um, okay, they had the heavy-ish guitar, but they had the choruses, and they were in the charts. So it was just on, and then that was my beginning, I guess. And my grandmother and my mom used to buy me records, and just and it just went from there. The journey sort of began.
Yeah. And what about the extreme genres of music? How do you became a fan of, like, such genres are like punk, metal, and all this stuff more extreme?
As you go through the 70s, disco came in, and I kind of liked a little bit of that, but I was really into just stranger music. I used to like sci-fi movies, so I record that. But then I think about 1979, I think it was, me and a few. I came from a small village, which is about an hour from Birmingham. It's a really tiny village. So it was only me and a few friends, and I became friends with a guy called Mitch, who's from Birmingham but moved there, and we just liked heavy rock. He liked Deep Purple, Black Sabbath. I started to get into Black Sabbath and Judas Priest. There was like a record collecting club where you could like order records, and so you're just starting your journey. And I was like, okay, what's this album? Never Say Die or Jailbreak by Thin Lizzy, and then that was you're further up the road, and some of my friends they preferred to stay where they were, I guess.
Yeah.
My friend Mitch, his stepbrother was really into punk, and so as it became a little bit more, we would look at the magazines, and I saw like pictures of Venom. I'm like, who are these crazy guys? It's like, I'm like, this. It's a bit. Not only do they sound heavy, they're talking about black magic and stuff, which being a horror movie fan, I was just totally attracted to all that kind of stuff. And so I got into Venom, and then this other guy was into punk like Discharge. And he said, well, if you like Venom, you're probably going to like Discharge. And they exploded because it's pretty crazy stuff. And so I did, and then you cross over, and then I just always wanted something crazier, really.
Yeah.
So I loved Sabbath, I loved Priest, but when I heard Venom, I'm like, well, this is it. This is, then Slayer came along, Metallica, Exodus, and I'm like, well, this is all good stuff, And that was at the same time as I got into Exploded and Discharge, GBH, and it was the journey carried on.
And do you remember when you realized you had to be a musician?
Very young, like in some ways. I mean, it sounds cliche to say it, but when I was really young, a bit before I even probably went to preschool or whatever, I would. Well, no, maybe I must have been a little bit older, I suppose. But because I loved bands like Slade and the Sweet and the drums, especially, even though I loved the guitar, I liked the drums, and I used to get my grandmother's buckets and line them up, and I would bash these buckets, and I think that's at age of 6 or 7. I'm like, I want to be in a band. I want to be like these people. They're just crazy and they're loud. And that was kind of it. And my mum and my grandmother always say, well, yeah, maybe one day, and that's kind of how I went through school. It's interesting having children now because, it's a little different times maybe, but all the way through my school, I was, they were going to go, they'd always say, Embury, what are you going to do? And I'd be like, I'm going to be in a band. And they just laugh at me. I'm like, oh, well, we'll see. You believe it, but at the same time, you're still trying to get through life, aren't you?
Yeah. And what features, what elements of this kind of rock music caught your attention?
Well, the early stuff, it was just everything was, I don't know, everything was loud and I mean, bands like Slade and the Sweet, I guess it was kind of glam rock in a way, so sort of glammy, but the guitars were crazy shapes. I think I think it was the Sweet or one of the bands that had 2 drummers on stage, and I was like, well, that's brilliant. 2 better than 1.
Yeah.
That was my journey, and I just loved that, and everything seemed like everything seemed larger than life, I think. And when you live in, and when you're coming in a small village, and and again, it sounds cliche, but your parents are working 9 to 5, and you're just struggling for money, and I think you pick, even when you're a young child, you pick up on these vibrations, and so when something's coming in, it kind of takes you away from the world a little bit, just for a bit, loud, heavy. If it's not that, it could have been horror movies or science fiction movies I liked. All of that was just kind of fantasy escape for me. So it was all good,
Yeah. So let's talk about the book. Geezer Butler, who have recently released his memoir, Into the Void, said that one of the reasons to write a book is that he don't really heard details about his mom and dad, and he wanted to leave a history of his life to the young generations of his family. And what drives you to tell your story to the public?
Well, when I was asked if I'd be interested, because I always used to make jokes about, oh yeah, one day, in the book it'll be this, and me and my friends would laugh, kind of. But you get to a point, especially the past couple of years, when you've been doing this for 30, 35 years, and you realize that you have a lot of memories, but they're cool memories, and also from growing up, where I grew up, because the book covers it's not just about the time in Napalm, and that's very important. There's a lot of history in there, but also, as I've said, growing up in a village and getting into music and the importance my family had on me. They were very encouraging, and I think it felt about the right time. I mean, with the pandemic kicking in, and all kinds. Everybody was losing their minds in various ways, and
Yeah.
I'd never been at home for more than about a few weeks before for 20, 30 years. So I was at home for 2, 3 years. I was kind of losing my mind a little bit, driving my wife crazy, because I'm just used to. And so we were trying to balance that, but of course, loving being with the kids, and it just everything together just seemed like, okay. Well, yeah, I'll let me write something down here, and you worry, you think, well, I hope it's interesting for people to read, But Barney said to me, well, you don't want it to be just full of like silly tales. I'm like, well, there's some silly tales in there. There's quite a few, but there's also stuff about growing up in a particular time where where I grew up, it was like right as the industrial, because it was the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution, I guess, but that was all fading out, and I think I talk about it with a few of my friends, and you realise the importance of the area. I mean, Sabbath grew up down the road, then Priest were just around the corner, Led Zeppelin,
GBH.
and all these punk bands, everything, and sometimes you go, are you like a product of the environment? And I think in some ways maybe you are a little bit, because you're sort of, depending on how you want to live your life, you're yearning for escape. I mean, but also at the same time, Napalm Death gave me the opportunity to travel the world and meet people I'd traded with back in the mid '80s, and then just make lots of friends. So it's really important, because it became your career. But I've met some amazing people, did some really great tours, and now at 55, I'm going, well, this is the last quarter of my life, hopefully, So the book seemed a good thing to do.
Yeah. And did you wrote all the chapels by yourself, or did you have a co-writer helping you to do that?
There was a journalist friend of mine who he kind of dictated it, I guess, because it seemed slightly easier for me just to kind of ramble and talk, and he would jot it, he would write it down, and he got some interviews, I guess, with a few friends of mine who knew me and stuff, and so I guess it's co-written, I suppose, in some ways. I guess he kind of did the transcribing, which is difficult because my accent's hard to understand anyway,
Yeah.
But so yeah, it seemed an easier way of doing it than me trying to sit there and write. So I would try and I'd meet up with him every week, and we would just. I think I needed somebody to kind of ask me the questions, because as much as I was into doing the book, I was also a little bit kind of paranoid. I'm like, well, I hope it's interesting. I don't know. That's the weird thing about doing something like this. You realize after 35 years that you have a story to tell. You don't think about it at the time. You're just making music and traveling, and then all of a sudden you take a breath and you go, Jesus, I'm 55. I was 19 when I joined Napalm. Now I'm 55. What the fuck happened? Really.
Time flies.
Yeah.
And how the process of writing the book, how was the process like? How long does it take to complete the stories? How do you organize yourself to dedicate time to writing, considering you have lots of works with considerable amounts of bands?
We just started to meet up, which was here, which is the I guess I still call it the Napalm House. This is where for a good period of the Napalm Death's career, 4 of us lived here at one point. This house we have in Birmingham. So we would meet up here. I lived with my family out somewhere else, but Danny, the drummer, still lives here. Well, he's not here in America, but so we would meet up, and he would say, "Well, today I want to kind of think. I was thinking about asking you about this, and what do you remember about that?" Because sometimes you need just a quick spark to get going, and so, but and yeah, it sometimes was difficult to find the time, because you're playing shows, or you are making music, or lately just taking my kids to school.
Yeah.
and my wife's going, what, she's just kind of, she likes the idea of the book, but she's also looking at me like, what the hell, because that's, that's okay, it's kicking the ass a little bit, but in a good way. So yeah, just it is sometimes difficult to find to get the schedules to meet, I suppose. But it took about 2 years, I suppose, in a way, because then it was finding photographs to put in the book that are relevant to what I said and stuff. It's not a massively long book, I guess. And now I feel I forgot things. I left things out that I didn't realize that, But it's interesting for me because I like to do different things, and I'm thinking, well, this could be quite interesting maybe in the future. Where, I mean, I always use the word cliche, but I always wanted to be in a band and make music, and I've been lucky to do it. And I think, well, if I can do it, anyone else can do it, So it's like, well, and also, the industry constantly changes. It's different than it was years ago, but it'd be nice to try and pass on some experience, because I've made loads of mistakes. You just do, and try to steer people in a different direction, not a different direction, but to try and make them aware of. When you play music, you do it with all your heart, and you have to also be aware that the industry out there are like sharks,
Yeah.
So be careful of that. So it's been good for me to do, really. And you sit there and go, well, wow, I'm quite a lucky guy, So,
Yeah, and how this kind of immersion on your own history affected you?
Well, it just the last few years have been, well, I said, difficult for a lot of people. I mean, I certainly, I've had a testing few years, trying to work out, because playing music so many shows, really became a challenge once I had a family, and that was a real point with me of like trying to work out who am I if I'm not the bass player of Napalm all the time, and so that was a question I was still asking in some ways, and you really have to, you recognize that of course you have a family and try and balance that. But so the book's kind of, I guess, in a way, sort of, because it talks about in places, it does talk about like I've been in what I call analysis with a friend, with a mentor of mine, to talk to this. It's like a Jungian analysis, which is you to explore your many, because we have many characters within ourselves. We're just not just one particular thing. So, this book kind of is about, I guess, laying bare the good parts, but also the not so good parts of me. I'm not perfect.
No, nobody is.
No, and so it's trying to work out all that out. So, and I think that's what I'd like. A few people who've read the book have said, well, it's pretty honest, and it's not all fun and laughter, even though there's a lot of that in that. It's talks about other things too. So it's hopefully helping me kind of like not close a chapter, but just anyway, maybe close one chapter, but open another one in a different way, I guess.
And what are some of the most cherished moments you revisit while working on life and Napalm Death?
Well, to me, when I joined Napalm Death and we were young, and we loved all manner of extreme music, but we used to tape trade. Cassettes would come through the door, and we would write to people in the States, in Brazil. I used to trade records with a couple of guys then in Brazil. I used to get the Atomica, Sarcophago, all those records, and then I would send them some records, and things like that. And and then when I first heard Sepultura, it was on a cassette, a demo cassette, and I was like, oh, brilliant. And then, so when you start to meet these people and you become friends with them through the power of music, really, and being able to travel, you go, wow, it's just it really means something. I mean, like when Sepultura brought us to Brazil for the first time in 1990, they brought us down there, and it was like, well, I knew the band kind of, but didn't know them, and then of course we became really good friends. So that's a cool memory for me. And you look at some old pictures and how young you were and things like that, and you go, God, what was that? But and then lucky to meet one of my probably my favorite heavy metal singer, which is Ronnie James Dio. I met him, and we talked about his time when he was rehearsing for Heaven and Hell in Birmingham, and of course he had a really amazing memory. So he would talk about stuff, and well, you remember that? And he put his hand on my shoulder and said, I like Napalm, you know that, don't you? And I don't ever give it up.
He said that?
He said, yeah, he said, you don't ever give up, and I really respect Napalm Death for pushing extreme music forward, I can't remember exactly. And I still drank at the time, not much, but my wife was there, and I had to sit down. I started crying, And my
Nice
my wife's like laughing. She's like, not in a bad way, but she just, and he just kind of like he gave my wife a kiss and said, look after him, and it was just like, wow, it's like that's a pretty special memory for me, because when growing up, we used to have headbanging competitions to stargaze, and me and my friends at the age of 10, and I'm like, next thing, fast forward 20, 30 years, and having a conversation, it's quite special, really,
And you can tell us some bad memories you had when working on the book?
Well, I mean, bad memories.
Not bad memories, but moments.
Yeah, Napalm Death's career is quite long, many albums. When we did the fifth album from his Fear, Emptiness, Despair. As a band, we were not very together at that point. We were very distant, I think, in what we kind of wanted to do, and there was a little bit of personal tragedy surrounding the whole incident of recording, and I think because you're young, it was already quite sad when you're young, but then when you look back at it older, you realize you could have probably, you would have done things differently, more maturely. Yeah. That's the thing is, hindsight, you go, oh, that wasn't, And then, of course, when we parted company with Barney for a while, it was just purely because we just couldn't talk to each other, without, and what I'm learning a lot is just the obvious. You learn the obvious thing, but the obvious thing is purely communication, and sometimes, especially in bands are like relationships. You just really have to talk, and try and explain. Well, look, I'm not trying to offend anybody here. I'm just speaking, and you try and compromise. Is always the thing, and I can point the fingers. I know in the 90s I was very stubborn, my stubbornness would make other people stubborn, and then you just don't move forward, and so when you reflect on that, you go, oh, I could have done things differently, and never too late to change, so I'm trying.
Yeah, and it's nice to realize that even now, after so many years. So as Napalm fan, I have to ask you, there's something about the late Jesse.
Pardon me, sorry?
Book. There's something on the book, about Jesse.
Yes, of course. That does get touched upon. This very house where I'm sitting, at one point there was the four of us living here for a long period of time. Jesse's whole bedroom is above me where I sit right now when we're in England, when he first joined the band, he used to come over to stay at my mom's house, and my mom would cook dinner for him, and it was I think it was a big move for Jesse coming over to England, and I often think about it a lot. If it was the other way around, it was big steps for Jesse, Mitch, and Danny to come all this way. And again, with Jesse, we do talk about certain things really that quite sad things in a way, really, because I think about Jesse quite a lot. I think about Jesse probably even more now than I did around the passing of his death, actually.
And that's something have to do with the book, with revisit that history or things like that?
yeah, there's stuff in there. Will be things in there that we talk about with Jesse and well, everybody really. We've all. I think what you with us being together for such a long time, the journey that we've had for all of us, but definitely for me, Jesse, Mitch, and Danny, we became brothers because we lived together. We used to go and party together. We would in the early '90s. The music scene in Birmingham was there's bands all the time. We used to go out. We'd be part, whatever Jane's Addiction would play. Jesse was a huge Jane's Addiction fan, and
Yeah.
we go and see them, and 2 days later somebody else would be playing, and so you become really close. And for me, certainly, I mean, I have a sister, but I never had any brothers, so I was really happy because I also have brothers. I'm like, this is amazing, brilliant. But of course, things went a little sour, not sour, sad, I suppose. I think for many, and this does get mentioned in the book, really, and it's important to. Well, again, at this point in my life, I reflect on that period with Jesse because it's the dynamics of being in a band and how stressful that can be, and the importance of family. Really, I think.
Yeah.
And that it can become a struggle. Sometimes when you don't, the intensity of just playing music all the time is amazing, but it's at some point you have to go, well, you have to redefine what's really important to you as well. If that makes sense. So yeah, the book touches upon our relationship. Yeah.
And what about Mitch? As you talk about that, do you still keep in touch with him? He's still contributing to new Napalm songs. What are
Mitch. Well, when we eventually start to work on a new Napalm album, which I have an awful lot of music. A lot of ideas. Mitch won't be contributing. I mean, Mitch is pretty much not in the band anymore. He kind of decided to move to the States and concentrate on other things in his life. I keep in touch with him all the time. He's in Vegas, where he's kind of from. So usually he's in the pub when I send him a message, and when we talk, it's as if sometimes we don't talk for a few weeks or even a month, and we talk as if it was yesterday. It's me and Mitch had a very deep understanding of what we went through a lot together. He often says that to me sometimes. I think if he's reminiscing, if he's up late having a few beers thinking about the past, he'll say, "Oh, we did this and we saw that." And I'm like, "Yeah, we did. We had a fucking crazy life. We did, and it's good, something to cherish. Let's see what happens with the next how many years we have. Who knows?" So yeah, I mean, I'm friends with I'm friends with Lee Dorian. I'm friends with Bill Steer. I'm friends with Mickey Harris. I see Mickey once in a while. Mickey's completely crackers, insane in a good way.
Yeah.
And now, I don't. I was actually hanging out with Nick Bullen the other week, and he's the guy that formed Napalm Death back in the day. Me and him went to see the Melvins recently. That was fun. So yeah, I keep in contact with everyone as best I can.
Cool. As the title of the book is Life in Napalm Death, at least in my interpretation, you kind of divide your life between Napalm and the rest of your life. It's kind of that the title suggests.
Well, yeah, I think we were trying to work out what would be an interesting title. And of course, there's the song called Life,
Yeah, yeah.
which is. So I thought that was what do you? I don't even know what you actually call that. Is it some sort of irony? I don't know, but with a question mark. But it's like, well, and it definitely has been, especially as I said, especially the past few years for me. It's like I'm married, but I'm also married to Napalm Death. And it's in a way, it's a weird way of thinking. But that so it's like it's become quite a bit of a. Is battle the right word? I don't know, but there's definitely been a tension from me to try and work out, where your day with Napalm Death ends and then your life begins with home life, and which is more important, I suppose. Not so much more important, but trying to really work on priorities, because I think for a long time I've always been like so head deep into creating music, which is a massive part of me. I don't feel like I've totally neglected my family, especially not now, but I'm coming to realize I could have done things maybe differently. I don't know. So it is, the book does kind of talk about the balance, trying to find the correct balance between, because the thing is, when you are creative, if you're an artist or whatever you do, it becomes more than just 9 to 5. It can become, sometimes it can totally consume you, and you can be there 24 hours trying to switch off. I mean, I'm terrible sometimes at like 2 in the morning, my head just goes ding, and I'm awake, and then it's like, and sometimes at 2-3 in the morning I'm kind of more creative and active, but then of course my son's next to me, so I have to go. I've got to be, I've got to rein it. Then of course, then they time for school. Then I'm fucked. At 7 in the morning, I'm like, God, I was fine at 2 o'clock. Like my whole body clock sometimes is enslaved to the touring life, and so I guess life in Napalm Death is quite apt in a way, really,
Yeah. And do you used to read a lot? Are you a reader?
I don't read as much as I used to. I used to read an awful lot. I have a few books I'm attempting to find time for. I also need to really jump into. When I first met my wife, I'd started to learn Japanese, and I got completely lazy when she moved to England because she speaks English really well. And I've determined. They're away for 6 weeks. I'm determined to try and up my game in Japanese. But I like to. I spend a lot of time. Sort of. I don't know. I have a thing sometimes where, like, if I come up with a strange phrase, or if I find I'm quite attracted to sort of ancient history and religions and stuff. So if I come across a word which means something in English, but I'm fascinated, I like to type it in and see what else comes up. And then it's quite a journey sometimes where you start to learn things about different cultures just by randomly putting in something. So I like to do things like that. But I used to read a lot when I was younger, just a lot of fantasy books and stuff. But there's a couple of books I want to read. The book, I've had it for a while, and John has already read it, which is Jazz Coleman's from Killing Joke, his book. So it's pretty heavy going, but I think that's something I need to get stuck into, really.
And do you used to read for your kids?
Oh, I do that. Yeah. I sing to them and I read to them, and I've because my daughter, her name is Izumi, and in Japanese it's Izumi. They go Izumi-chan. So my son calls Izumi when he was, not now, but when he was younger, he couldn't say Izumi, so he called her Bean-chan. So I create stories with Bean-chan and Hiro, and my 2 kids, and I make stories that involve our cats and all kinds of. I kind of sometimes sit there going, oh, maybe I'll write children's books one day. I don't know. It's a weird, bizarre thing that comes into your head, and I don't know. It's a wonderful thing having kids, because opens different doors that you normally would never open, and I like to read to them. They like they really love the Moomins from Finland and Sweden, so I read them to them, and they're both fluent in Japanese, so they read a lot of Japanese books, and so they're quite multi-angle, really. But yeah, I like to read to my kids. I sing to them all the time, and things like that, and yeah, it's good.
And who wrote the foreword and who wrote the afterword for the book?
They did a little forward just from me. I think it was just a kind of, not so much a statement, but it was like, well, this is kind of what it is. It's like, do I have regrets? Well, I have a few, but I wanted to hopefully the book presents me. People know some stuff about me, but it's not just the good stuff. I mean, there's some parts in there I think where it hopefully shows me as a human being, I guess.
Yeah.
Which is important, really, because when this is what I discovered a lot about relationships, especially as I may be the bass player in Napalm Death, but I go home and it doesn't wash. If I'm in trouble, I'm in trouble. So there you go. That's the way it is.
Back into the musical part of your life, you wrote a bunch of songs for the bands you play with, and you usually don't sing them, just do backing vocals. But recently, you take the role of main vocalist on the track "Fractured" from the Venomous Concept, as you did on Inside the Torn Apart. Is it your idea to sing more since now?
I have been. Yeah, I did a project with our producer Russ Russell, a project called Tronos. I'm not sure whether you heard that. And I pretty much do all the vocals on that mostly. I didn't intend to do that. It was just that we could not find a vocalist, and so I started kind of like, I guess, imitating in some ways some of the people I admired, and then I've started to progress and get better. And also on which album, on the Throes of Joy album, I sing on Amoral, that track as well. So I sing on that one. But yeah, it's one of those things I never intended to really do that. With Fractured, it was when we were making the album, it just seemed Kevin wasn't really comfortable with the kind of melodic part. And I thought, oh, well, I'm kind of imagining kind of some sort of Husker Du stroke, and you will know us by Trail of the Dead kind of vibe, so I was trying to do that. And then I've just done a new album, which I haven't got a name for the project yet, where I do all the vocals, and it's very, very, very different to probably anything I've ever done. I don't know how you describe it, really. It's kind of, musically, it has elements of, I guess, say, early industrial, but also kind of like, I don't know, weird pop, but dark pop synthesizer stuff. So I do all the vocals on that, and there's a lot of, I guess, singing, but I haven't worked out what I'm going to call it yet, so I can't really say anything. But I'm really happy with that album. That was that kind of lyrically, it's just about my kind of the past few years. They were quite dark at times, and my mum passed away last year, and that kind of affected me quite bad, as death does, I guess. And so yeah, bro, I like singing. It's all right. It's okay. Yeah. I think when you sing to your kids, it's good practice. Really.
Yeah, that's a good thing to do and practice to your kids. You pick your 10 favorite Napalm songs on Instagram recently, so I'd like to say some of my favorite Napalm tracks, and I'd like to ask me something about these tracks. Is that okay for you?
We can try. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, okay. Let's start with Evolved as one.
What do you like about that? You want me to answer that, or do you want to answer that?
Yeah. I'd like to say something about these tracks that I'll say you.
You can tell me, yeah. Go on. Yeah.
Evolved as one, from the first track from Enslavement to Obliteration.
What do you think? You want to know what I think about it? Okay. Well, that track's interesting because we've always been fans of early Swans,
Yeah.
but also, I mean, all era, all types of industrial music, and that was a track where it came about very spontaneously. It wasn't planned originally as part of the record. We just kind of sat there and just said, "Oh, let's do a track like this." And I think Bill at the time wasn't a massive fan of the Swans, so he was like, but we did it, and Mickey does some vocals on that track too. So yeah, but I think it's good. What's interesting about that track is the rest of the album is very insane and frantic. And I think people expect Napalm to start frantic, and it doesn't. So it's kind of cool in a way, I think.
And do you remember why put this track to open the album?
Yeah, it was the idea was to just kind of I think I don't know. I think when you're a fan of a band, or Napalm Death was I'd only done the first album, and everyone they're known for the fast short songs. So you put the record on, and all of a sudden you get this really slow track. People are like, "What the hell's going on?" You're just kind of you're delaying, not delaying, but you're kind of, I don't know what they call that really, but it's tension, I think, is the best word to describe. And that kind of thing is really good, I think.
Next one, Cursed Crow.
Cursed Crow is actually, I do sing on the verses on that.
Yeah.
The actual idea didn't come out exactly the way I wanted it to come out, because I was a really a massive fan of an English band called Slab, and they're only around for a while, but the one album Dissension, there's a song on this album called Flirt, I think the track is, and Cursed Crow was, I guess, my attempt at trying to do a track like that, but it doesn't have as much grit and dirt as the Slab track, which later as years have gone on, I've managed to kind of perfect. So I'm always kind of like, there's certain things that I love about certain bands, and I'm always like, I really want to do something like that with Napalm, or bring it into the band somehow. And so yeah, Cursed Crow was my attempt at doing that, I guess. I think people at the time were, some Napalm fans liked it, but some were just confused. They were like, "What's the band trying to do?" And I think, and that's always the thing with those mid 1990s albums. I think some people will say, "Oh, the band's trying to sell out." And I'm like, well, not really. So selling out would be just doing the same thing over and over again. I mean, I understand if we suddenly came out with an acoustic pop record, then I'm like, oh, maybe we are trying to do something totally left field. But it was me, Jesse, and Mitch were fascinated by the bands that we were getting into. Had really interesting drum beats, and we thought, well, let's try and do something like that in a Napalm Death way.
Yeah, I have to say that those three records of the 90s that most of the people don't like, that is a Diatribe and Inside the Torn Apart and Inside the Torn Apart and the previous Words from the Exit ones. That I love those three albums. And the next track I'd like to say something about is the Infiltrator.
Yeah, the Infiltrator is one that we play live now. Currently, we hadn't played it for a long time, and right, what's good about that song is it kind of has like moments of Mass Appeal Madness, moments of Suffer the Children, a little bit. It's pretty up tempo. It hits straight away, and I'm pretty sure Barney, when he wrote the lyrics, he like me tends to, I guess they call it playing on words. And I remember there's an old track from the Florida band called Massacre called The Traitor. So, of course, Barney was a fan of Massacre, so he probably said, "Oh, I've got a great title. I'm going to call it The Infiltrator." Probably. I don't know. I haven't asked Barney if that's true, but I have a feeling it probably.
That makes sense.
And yeah, it's one of those songs where it gets going straight away. And when you play it live, usually the kids start reacting straight away. So it does what it needs to do, you know. So it's good.
Yeah. Another one, Cure for the Common Complaint from Enemy of the Music Business.
Yeah, Cure for. I mean, that's one that we haven't played. I don't think we've ever played live. And it's something I think that's probably going to change in the future. There's a lot of songs we've never really played live. I mean, John Cook, who plays guitar with us now, he really wants to he wants to play that track. I think that one is I think me and Mitch wrote that together. So that's always interesting to do, because sometimes, not always, Mitch would have a really great beginning, and then he couldn't go any further. And then at the time it was like, I'd have to go, okay, well, how do we carry this on? Because me and Mitch were the best of friends, but we were also quite competitive with each other. You know? I don't know why, it's just silliness in a way, I suppose. But it was at one point, it was just weird. It's the way it was, and so it was always fun trying to like finish somebody else's composition, not finish it, but add to it, I guess. And that's definitely one of them. And so sometimes you do it, you would get paranoid if it was okay. But it turned out pretty cool, I think, that song, you know.
Another song I would like to know why you choose to play. That's not an Napalm song. That's a dedicated song. That's Nazi Punk's "Fuck Off." That's a great version. But there's something that prompted you to choose these tracks. Something that happening, or just it's just a track that you love.
Well, I think originally there was I think the Alternative Tentacles label. I think it was an anniversary, or I believe. And Billy Gould from Faith No More, who's a really good friend of mine, he said that they actually, I'm not sure if he chose the track or Jello chose the track. He said, "Would you like to do a cover of Nazi Punk Fuck Off?" For many reasons. I mean, we've played shows in the past, and we've encountered like right wing skinheads, and just there's been times where it's been not so much lately, but certainly in the early 90s, where there were problems, and we were known for being quite reactionary towards these people. You know, and so it was this. I guess their suggestion, but of course we love the Dead Kennedys, so we'll try our best. And but I don't know whether everyone knows this or not, but if you listen to, obviously, the Dead Kennedys track is very short. Our version has this really kind of tribal part that starts at the beginning. You know, it's just the riff slowed down. But the reason it's like that is because me, Mitch, and Jesse loved the Mountain Song by Jane's Addiction. So we took the beat, and then we just slowed the riffs down to Nazi Punks, and so that became our version, you know. And I think because it obviously means it has a positive message, we've just kind of adopted that track as something we always play, you know. It's just one of those things that just has evolved that way. And I think we've played it since guaranteed every show we do since 1990. So I think it came out when it came out as a 7-inch. I think it was a benefit 7-inch for some of the problems that were going on in South Africa, I think, at the time, you know. But yeah, that's the story behind that, I guess, you know.
And what's going on in the camp of our musical projects, like besides Napalm, like Brujeria, Dark Sky Burial, Venomous Concept, Tronos, as you said, Blood from the Soul?
Well, Dark Sky Burial is just I've always wanted to do electronic stuff for years, and I kind of put it on the side, and then pandemic hit. I needed something just to kind of ease my brain, you know. So that's I find it kind of therapeutic, you know. I just sit here with my synths and I drift away into like kind of strange horror music land, I guess. And so I've done 7 albums on Bandcamp in like 3 years, you know, and I'm probably doing well, I'm working on. I'll be working on another one while my family's away, and hopefully maybe do a show here and there. I say a show, more of an experimental show, really, from time to time. So that's something I'd like to do, and do some vinyl issues. Hopefully, Blood from the Soul is something which Dirk, who plays in Megadeth, Dirk Verboeren, before he joined Megadeth, I guess, he was always saying to me, do another Blood from the Soul album, and I didn't know what to say. And then I remember that Jacob from Converge liked the band, and so through Dirk and Jake, we managed to make a second album. So I think I'm going to see Dirk in a couple of weeks' time, and we're going to talk about doing a third album. What I want to do with Dirk, because Dirk's such an amazing drummer, I want him to record all the drum. I want him to invent like 10 tracks, like 4 minutes each, and then send them to me. So it challenges me to then go, what can I come up with to drums? It's a more of a unique way of doing it than just me playing a riff and go, oh, can you play drums for this? So that's that. Venomous Concept albums come out. Obviously, we're going to do some English shows in January, and then hopefully play when we can, here and there. It all depends on schedule. Lockup did its first show for a long time in Denmark recently, and Brujeria has a new album coming out in September. Finally, took a while. It's recorded for a while, but Brujo is very meticulous about what he wants. It has to be Brujo. Brujo has the final say. That's the way it goes, and which is all right. So I think that's turned out really good, that album. I think Anton wrote a lot of good stuff for it, and I think it has a little bit more, because the album before, it took us a long time to get it finished, and this one I think is more. It's not like Matandueros, but it's certainly got that brutality, and then it makes you laugh as well in a good way. So it's hopefully I'll play some shows at Brujeria soon. I won't be coming on the tour they're doing up soon, because I've got other things I have to do, fortunately. But I'm hoping to tour with them end of the year next year, and then see what happens, I guess.
Is there any story from the book that you haven't talked about in your social media or in the press that you can tell us in advance?
Well, it's put me on the spot, I suppose. I'm trying to think if what's really happened. I mean, there's a lot of stories that come to mind that I forgot. I think, some get mentioned, but not everything really. I know when we did I talk about when we did the first Brujeria album, which is pretty crazy. But the one bit I didn't mention in that, which is not that really much of a story, but it's kind of funny, because me and Jesse went to see Alice in Chains in London, in LA, and then Brujo was like, "Look, we're recording the album. If you want to be there, you got to go now." And of course, me and Jesse had a little. Well, Jesse, we both had a few beers, so we drove up there. It's like, with a few beers, it's like, it's not good, My bass guitar was in the back of the car, so I pulled the bass guitar out. I mean, I think I still believe I have it on video somewhere. I must see if I can find it. But I know that we were trying to do some songs, and Jesse was like, "No, it was not working for Jesse." Then I recorded some songs, and then I think it might have been Peach who said, "Well, you can't be drunk yet, Shane, because I can still understand what you're saying." So that's so that's a good one. And then that was quite great. That's the earliest. All Brujeria recording sessions are crazy, but that was a particularly crazy one. For sure. Yeah.
And there's any plan to release your book in Brazil? Any chance of that?
Well, let's just see. I mean, a couple of people have been in touch with me about that, and I'm talking to the book company about that next week, actually. And so hopefully all being well. Danny's just come back. But so yeah, I mean, fingers crossed. You know, I can get that happening. I hope. All being well.
Okay, Shane, thank you for your time. I appreciate your attention.
No problem, man. No problem. No problem at all.
Thank you.
Cheers, mate.
All the best for you.
And you take care, man. Yeah. Bye, man.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Bye. All the best.
Okay, man. Bye.
Bye.